Welcome everybody to the artist talk with Anne-Theresa de Keersamaeker. I'm Miriam Althammer and lead through this conversation. We are sitting, or I am sitting in the studio of the Dance Festival in Munich in the Muffathalle, and I'm very happy to share the next 20 minutes with you, Anne-Theresa, and also with you as an audience in front of the screens at home. Anne-Theresa is a dancer and choreographer based in Brussels. She founded her company in '83, Rosas. She was also a part of the dance festival in 2012, so probably some of you remember her amazing work at the Residenztheater. And also she founded the dance school Parts in Brussels in '95, which influenced generations of dancers in the past 25 years. Anne-Theresa, this evening your solo Goldberg variations should have actually been shown in Munich, but unfortunately everything turned out differently than the program has planned, and we meet now in this kind of gathering ritual of trying to share communality, but not being able to relate physically. And instead, 3 film documentaries will be shown throughout the weekend that give insight into your work. And I would be interested, why did you decide against to show a live stream or a video on demand from your solo, and how this current situation affects you as a dancer and choreographer?
Well, I think this current situation that has started more than 1 year ago um, hits everybody all over the world. It, of course, hits the DNA of our practice, being a dancer, the performing arts, sharing life, time, and space. Um, I mean, purely practical, we had nearly 250 performances cancelled in the last year. It has been a period of everything possible when we stay in Brussels and we work. But yeah, it has been extremely challenging. I think I don't have to explain this to anybody. Rosas is a company that works 75% on their own income from performing. So when that completely falls away, it fragilizes. It becomes about surviving. It is true that this crisis has not only brought bad things, there is a different pace. There has been more time to spend together without a different kind of pressure in the studio. I'm blessed and very grateful that I can work here, that I have a good working space, and I have a group of dancers with which I can work and prepare future projects. Nevertheless, I'm really quite worried what happening here now on the short term and what the consequences are on the long term. I'm mainly worried for young generations. I experience this daily, what happened with PARTS, Performing Arts Research and Training Studios in school. I'm worried about getting where we mistrust the body, not only the body of others, but our own body. I have a worry that my feeling is that we are in this dichotomy of we want to go back to business as usual, but in the same way, we do realize that we should not go back to business as usual. because the underlying reasons of this whole pandemic are far more deeper and wider, and we basically have to do with our relationship to nature
Mm.
and what the consequences of that are. So it has been a really intense reflection about what dance means in my life, in our lives, a way of organizing the space and time of people together. Um, Something profoundly human, I think, something about celebration and about healing, about reflection on many different levels, uh, mechanically, emotionally, socially, intellectually, spiritually. Um, yes, I think dancing becomes a refuge, a way where it becomes not only a way of healing ourselves, but it also becomes a weapon, maybe. Um, I think even more than music, everybody can dance, and in many different ways. I think it's a way of celebrating life. And we're literally screened off. Yeah, like here, what's happening now.
Mm.
Ähm, sagt man das auf Deutsch? Ein Schirm?
Ein
Scherm.
Schirm?
No, in Flemish you say scherm. How do you call this?
N
Um,
ein Pinsel. Ne.
no, when you fight, a sport of fighting sport.
Fechten, ein Degen.
Ein Degen. Yeah, in Flemish, the screen of a computer and is een scherm, which is also the way een degen, een degen.
Degen, ja.
Yeah.
Na,
So, yeah.
yeah, so
Uh,
therefore,
it 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 it's sort of we're looking inside to the world by kind of a reduced screen. So I'm missing that, and I ja, ich weiß es auch nicht mehr oft. Ja, es gibt der großen Fußballer Johann Cruyff, who was a trainer of Barcelona, also said every every disadvantage has its advantage. Every back has a front. You know, it's a way of how you turn it. But to keep this motto in an elegant way alive has been quite challenging these days. Yes.
mm.
Mm, yes.
Yeah. So then you decided to show those 3 documentaries who also have this transfer from a dance performance
Mm,
to another medium, to the film, and you started like these are those 3 documentaries. The one it's called Mitten from 219 and Hoppla from 89 and Rain from 2012. So with Hoppla, you started very early in the 80s to deal with this medium film. What offered that for your artistic practice, and why were you interested to transfer choreography into films?
well, it's a different way of writing of communicating and framing and organizing time and space. It's moving art photography. Yeah. It's a way of reaching a way much more larger public. It's access to detail. It's a way of framing. Yeah.
mm,
A way of zooming in and zooming out. Um, if you see, I mean, there have more people have seen Rosas than Rosas to film than in live performance. Even we did like 300 or 400 times Rosas and Rosas since it was created in 1983. For me, it's like it's a different way of transmitting and giving a different life to a choreographic work. Yeah. Um, the Mitten and Rain are different from Hopla because Mitten and Rain, they are really documentaries about the working process, and they give an inside view in how those pieces were made. They're made, I gave a sort of carte blanche to Olivia Rochette and Gerard Jan Klaas, and they spent a lot of time in the rehearsal studio, and they sort of framed their own vision of how they perceive. Where Hopla is, of course, one of the very early pieces I made after Fase Rosa and Rosele Nazaria. Bartok was my first, the first really writing choreography to serious classical music out of the 20th century. Yeah, Bela Bartok's Fourth String Quartet and the duet of Microcosmos. The film was made, was taken away from the black box and was set in the beautiful architecture of Henri van de Velde in the library of the University of Ghent. It was done by Wolfgang Kolb. Um, it was the first experience working with live music because all the previous performances had been done with not with tape music. Steve Reich, Jerry DeMay. Um, and yeah, so that was really not really like a streaming of that, but it was really like a filmic object that was made in itself. And where also I gave it to to another artist, being Wolfgang Kolb, to 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 give that material and to let him print his vision. Yeah. These days, YouTube has become the biggest dance library in the world. I mean, we have access to dance from all over, from all over,
mm,
and um, that really, I think, consistently changed our perception. When we started parts in 1995, I mean, there was still, when we started the school, people were not connected.
mm,
Students were not connected with the internet in the same way as we are today. So there is a flow of information and knowledge that we gather that brings us closer to how people since the beginning of times have used dance to speak about what they remember, where they are, and what they dream of, or what they want to share physically with each other. Um, but yeah, it is still a big gap, and that is one of the things today is the fact from it is not um, a substitute for what live performance is.
mm,
In it is sitting live performance is being sitting a little bit around the fire, you know, and especially now you
mm,
have to sit around the fire with distance and masks on, and behind the screen. So it doesn't mean that you can't make very beautiful objects and screenings with it, but it's a different logic, I think. Yeah, that was also the reason why I didn't want to do live streaming, because I see a lot of live streaming these days, which I think basically betray
Mm,
the very essence of what is so authentic about that experience of live
mm.
experience, you know.
What is the essence for you of dance or choreography? I've heard you in interviews talking also about considering choreography as an embodied abstraction. So, what are the elements or parameters, yeah, for choreography or for being in this kind of also sharing dance in this situation of sitting around the fire somehow?
Well, when you sit around the fire, somebody, I think, at the end of a day, or people who are sitting there, I think it's the first thing is people start to, do you remember what happened today, what happened yesterday, what happened many years ago? And then the other thing is, what if tomorrow that will happen? So it's a mental space of memory and projection. And then eventually people will to to embody that thought, or to celebrate a communal feeling, will will use the body and will use dance, you know. um, I think people have always danced at the big moments of life, which are the moments of birth, the moments of getting to, how do you say that, not maturity, but from adolescence to, how do you call that, initiation rites of, um, adolescence, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then there is, of course, the third moment is the moment of finding a partner. And then there is the moment of getting of maturity, of so-called wisdom, you know. And then there is dying. So there are kind of 5 possible stages. And people have always, out of an astonishment and wondered, asked themselves, where do we come from, and what remains, what disappears, what is important, what do we care about? And they looked down at the earth and they looked up at the sky and they observed nature and they discovered patterns and cycles and movements. And so then there is, out of that astonishment, there are basically, you can call it philosophical or spiritual or religious questions raised. And they look at relationships, at proportions, they compare, and all those things develop knowledge about it. And I think just like that step from, for example, geometry or mathematics to embody that, I think dance has in the same time be a possible way. I mean, there are many different possibilities of how defining dance, like moving architecture, jumping, turning, and jumping and turning. Um, it's a way of celebrating But it's also, the Greek word choreography came of writing. The chorea, graphe means writing, and chorea means the chorus, which was like a group of people. A group of people could also be the circular dance. So in the Greek tragedies, the chorus was commenting the main actors, and they were, in a critical way, commenting, reflecting of what the main actors did. So that was the function of the choreos, and their movements they did embodied that questioning. So organizing the time and space between people is a possible definition of choreography, and that also contains its political dimension, I think. Political being coming from the Greek word polis, which means city. It's where people come together, where a lot of people live together. And how do we organize that? How do we organize that, the movement of those people in the time? And of course, these days is quite challenging because of this pandemic. Science and politics, they impose certain choreography on us, which is about distance, about screening, about protecting, about mistrust, and it's of course going to the DNA because it's about our lives. It's about our health and how do we keep this tension field being protecting ourselves as individuals and to the people who are close to us? What is our need to the community on a daily basis? What do we do with the body that becomes fragile? What do we do with that fragility and vulnerability of older people? So it's yeah.
These are all traces and marks of a body, what you're describing, a certain memory, what a body also contains. And I remember that yet you were talking about the body as a house in which you or in which we live in. And I was wondering how all those traces and marks affect your choreographies or these different bodies of the dancers who are part of these choreographies.
You mean the films or no? Oh, how the dancers influence?
In your choreographies in general, this kind of physical memory.
Well, yes, of course. The, compared to other arts like visual arts or a choreographer most of the time, not exclusively, but works with a community of people and works with. You don't write. You are not in a solitude where you write everything on a paper. I mean, there is preparatory work and so, but it's a very socially very intense process where we're far beyond this thing, everybody to the front, to the back, to the left, and to the right, where there are basically, it's a kind of focused play that starts from certain questions. What if we What if we go this way? What if we reflect and try to embody that reflection um, in this or that way? So, of course, it's a very intense interaction with the dancers because they bring in their bodies is engraved the traces of all possible human experiences, not only of what they experienced in their lives, but also of their ancestors and their parents, brothers, sisters, the people who they love, the people they avoid. That it's all engraved in the DNA of their bodies, and that you carry that with. Yeah, not the RNA, but the DNA.
One other element which is connecting also those three films is the relationship between dance and music, which plays an important role in your works.
Mhm.
And in these films, you're using cello suites from Johann Sebastian Bach, from piano works and string quartets of Bela Bartok and Steve Reich's music for 18 musicians. How or which influence do all these music also from different times have on the on your works, and which kind of contexts create these music pieces?
Well, since the very beginning, um, I started dancing when I was 10. I became last year 60, so I have 50 years that dance is my partner. I always considered that Goldberg variations were my golden jubilee of my marriage with dance. It's my way of being in the world. And I think my first partner has always been music from a lot of different times, not so much the 19th century romantic music, but music has been my partner, has been my teacher. I, I learned how to organize time and space. I learned those techniques and all the possible strategies that you can develop in the relationship between dance and music. I learned a lot from music. It has a way of how you generate vocabulary, it has a way of how you as a performer, how you organize your. I think music is also a very beautiful way of embodied abstraction, you know. I think a lot of my knowledge of craftsmanship came besides from my education, came from the observation of nature, and a lot of that craftsmanship also came by looking at and studying how composers were doing it. Most recently there has been a really vivid interest in visual arts, in painting and sculpture, and um, from the first geometrical designs that people were doing on the pots of cooking pots, or drawing spirals with your finger in the sand, um, to the beautiful drawings of animals in how do you say grotta? Caves. Caves. The, which were also ways of people, besides telling the stories or besides dancing, is embodying something, embodying a fear or an adoration or like. But generally speaking, music has been my first partner. and different music from different times channel different energy. Yeah, the music of the ars subtilior of the 12th century or 13th century channels a different kind of energy as the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, of Miles Davis, or Coltrane, of Talking Heads, yeah, so to say, or to call another genius in music, Prince, you see. So it has been my a source of inspiration, consolation, source of beauty. Yeah, and a natural, a natural partner of dance, I think.
Yeah, and this partner, the audience will get to know a bit more through watching these documentaries.
Mhm.
And I would like to thank you very much for the time you shared with us, and wish you all the best for your work.
Yeah,
And yeah, and to the audience, enjoy the 3 films.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all the best. I hope you enjoy it too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I go back to the studio.
yeah. Have a nice day.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
bye bye.
Bye.